Hey, welcome back to another fantastic live stream. Today we've got the Lucky St. Patrick's Day 4-leaf clover and horseshoe. And if you don't know me, my name's Adrian. I'm a part of the Cavallini Stained Glass Studio where we work on hundreds of stained glass panels every single year. And today we are going to be doing a live stream of this panel. And this is a part of our Stained Glass Mastery free community. And so if you want to learn a little bit about that, I will put some links into the description. And so this is another one of our scrap box projects. And so for today, we are going to be picking out some of the glass here. And I've got a few pieces, some brown and green glass. And I was thinking for the 4-leaf clover, this green glass would work out pretty nicely. And for the horseshoe, something kind of rusty, brownish, I thought would work pretty good. So that was kind of the idea behind those. And these are actually vinyl patterns, so we can peel this up and put it onto the glass, and we can use that to cut with. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. Of course, we are going to be cutting first. And so we're going to start with the 4-leaf clover. And what I'm going to do is I went ahead and traced this side so you can see it pretty good. And this left side I will be using the vinyl pieces. So we'll go ahead and get that started. And so our glass here, it's kind of random, not, really, I guess what's the word? It's not too directional. So we don't need to really be too focused on where exactly we want to put the pieces in terms of the direction. I'm going to kind of inspect them a little bit. It has some texture on this side, so we're going to want to make sure to do the smoother side. And I think that we're going to save this bigger piece and maybe work on these smaller pieces here. And let's see. So what we're going to want to do, since it's pretty much, this maybe has a little bit of a direction this way, I'm going to maybe try to do that as the side where I want to put all of the pieces oriented. So I'll kind of do like this, and then when we go to actually put the pieces together, it will sort of have this orientation consistent throughout all the pieces. I think that'll look pretty good. So we'll just find a good spot to put this one. Put it right here. And we've got our little stem here. Go ahead and put that one down too. Let's see, I think somewhere like this will work. And so we've got our green glass figured out. Now we're going to want to put the horseshoe. And this cutout part, you're going to see here in a little bit what we're doing with that. And this glass, it has a little bit of a direction, so we're going to want to go ahead and keep that consistent also. Put that down there. All right. And if you have any questions during the duration of this, just be sure to put them in the chat and I'll be sure to answer them. There we are. Okay. So now that we pretty much have our glass figured out here, going to go ahead and get this cutting. So we can use the vinyl as our template. And what I'm going to probably do is try to kind of separate these so I don't start breaking into the workpieces. So with pretty consistent, even pressure, going to score the glass like that. And then I normally just break it with my hands. So that's normally my preferred way to go ahead and do that. Okay. So we'll go ahead and continue on separating all of these pieces for our 4-leaf clover. And it's the luck of the Irish that we're hoping to gain from this little panel. And with St. Patrick's Day, I believe it's tomorrow. So this would be a nice little home decor for that. And of course, if you want all of these free patterns, we do have them in the Stained Glass Mastery community. So again, I'll be, there should actually already be a link in the description if you want to go ahead and get access to all those free patterns and many other resources that you might find useful, especially if you are a beginner. Okay, so now we got the horseshoe. And what I like to do is I like to just cut right up against that vinyl. And if it's not perfect, it's okay. We're going to take it to the grinder. And you'll notice that after I score, my preferred method to break the glass, or to separate the glass, I should say, is to just tap the breakthrough. And that is a really easy way that I find to get that glass separated. And make sure as you go to sweep off all those little glass shards, because they will definitely cause you some problems. And so whenever you're cutting these curves, you kind of have to move your elbow, and that's what gives you that pretty nice, consistent, cut. Now, when you do get something like this, where there's not a whole lot of meat, it can be a little tricky to break that. So what I like to do is I like to do a secondary score, and then I take this tool, the glass grozers, with the flat end on top. I'll start to remove pieces, and I'm going to get my trash can right next to me, kind of throw away all those little scraps. And so now I can just kind of remove just a little bits of this at a time, because this is kind of a thin part. It'll just break right through. So you want to really kind of try to take your time here. And if you have to, sometimes I'll chew it away a little bit like this, and that'll just get me closer to that score line until it finally breaks along that score. So this, I would say, it's probably just one step up from beginner. The easiest panels will have pretty much all straight lines and not too many really thin areas like this. So this one, but it's not too bad. There's only a few in this particular panel. So I think a beginner could tackle this project, but I wouldn't say maybe as your very first project. So I don't know if you can hear that on the camera, but it's a pretty consistent sound whenever you're scoring the glass. That's what you want. And we'll just keep taking these away. And you're going to see if we have any little leftover shards and stuff like that. If we look on this close camera, see all these little shards left over around the vinyl. We're going to use that vinyl as a template to grind to. So that'll be a pretty easy way to get exactly the right shape we need. Go ahead and sweep that off. Okay. So again, we have another pretty thin part right here, this little corner. But fortunately, there's a fair bit of meat on this side. So normally, if it looks like that, it'll sort of be strong enough not to be breaking across. Because what we're afraid of is it breaking across like this. So that is why sometimes I'll do the score like this, remove this piece, and then I can start chewing away closer to that score line. Oh, see, that time it just broke perfectly. So I did a few taps on it. That helps to run that score straight through. So we're going to continue on here. And maybe it's the luck of the Irish that had us get that last one breaking perfectly. Now you're going to notice too, these little horseshoes, they've got these rounded edges. And it's going to be pretty much impossible to cut that perfectly. Not impossible, but it's going to be a little bit difficult. It'll be really easy just to grind those down. So we're going to kind of probably not score that perfectly. And then we're just going to take care of that on the grinder and be really easy. So, making some pretty good progress here. Let me sweep this off. All right, we've got a few of our horseshoe parts. And so these little cutouts, we're going to use this vinyl that's left over right here. And we're going to make a copper foil little cutout template. And we are going to solder that. And so we'll have some little ridges on our horseshoe. So I think that'll come out pretty nice. Now this green gloss that I've got, it is very textured on both sides. So definitely whenever you're picking out gloss, especially if you're a beginner, consider that texture. It's going to make it a little bit harder to get a nice clean score line if that texture is very, you know, rough. The smoother gloss is much easier to cut. Now, the only thing is that textured gloss does have maybe a little bit more character, but you can get a lot out of just smooth stained gloss too. So, you know, don't feel bad if you want to sort of start. Oops, and I got some debris underneath. If you want to sort of start with that smoother gloss. Even I have, see, I can barely even push this. It's so textured. I'm going to go ahead and knock that down on the grinder. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast with these textured glosses. Okay, now something like this, I can just kind of grozier it down, and then we can clean it up on the grinder. So that's a pretty quick way to kind of chew down the gloss. Because if you had to do all that on the grinder, that would be a little bit of time. Not the end of the world. But just knocking down the big areas with the groziers will definitely save you some time. Yes, yes, homemade, thank you, yep. Luck of the Irish is with us on this pattern. All right, let's check through here. Okay, got our first little 4-leaf clover piece on there. And we are going to continue on the next piece. That was a little bit off, but we'll take care of that between the groziers and the grinder. Now, whenever you're cutting these curved areas, you do not need to try to do it in one fell swoop. You can do it in pieces. So that's what we're going to be doing here. And I normally will do kind of what my wrist can comfortably get to on this particular shape, because you know what's going to end up happening is it's going to break in these directions like this, and we don't really have much risk of it breaking in the direction like that into our actual workpiece. So we're not too worried about you know, extra cuts, and we can kind of do them sort of haphazardly because we don't really care if we mess this piece up because we already separated all of our pieces. Now, if we were still cutting them on one big piece, you know, I wouldn't want to just do this so haphazardly and then it cuts into my piece right next to it. That's why we like to separate them, and then you have a better chance of not damaging, you know, the pieces next to it. So we'll continue on here. All right. Making pretty good progress here. This one is a little bit tough to cut, but nothing we can't clean up. And I'm normally kind of throwing off whatever pieces. If I do take off a bigger piece, I'll throw it off into the trash can. And then chewing the gloss up like this creates a big mess. I'll try to sweep it in the trash can. If not, that's what I've got my broom and dustpan for. And one thing I did forget, you do want to always keep your apron on as much as possible. That will protect your clothes, and that's something you want to definitely do when working with stained glass, because it can cut your clothes, the chemicals can damage your clothes, can be a little bit of a mess. So definitely try to wear your apron as much as possible. We've got that piece there. Okay. Now, there we are. Now this particular shape honestly is not too bad as far as a piece to cut, because it's kind of hard to break the glass off into the workpiece. Because see, this shape, it's a little bit harder. Whenever the cuts go in this concave way, then you have a risk of breaking it into it. Even this is going to be probably something we do mostly on the grinder, this area. But this one, this is the only concave cut, and it's very shallow, so there's very little risk of it breaking into the piece. So this is a pretty decent sort of beginner panel. And another thing is when you're handling the glass, it can be kind of awkward. It can, kind of cut you. So if you don't feel comfortable, make sure to wear some gloves, some heavier duty gloves meant for like cut resistance. And after some time, you'll get pretty used to just your hands. But before then, there is no shame in protecting yourself. Okay. So we've got that. Lots of little pieces here. I'm going to try to clean it up with the grosers. And again, we're going to see what that grinder looks like here in just a second. Hey, Ben, thanks for coming by. Everything is going well. I hope you're doing well. We are working on the 4-leaf clover project. And if you guys have any suggestions for next week's Scrapbox project, let me know. This was actually one of the community members' suggestions for this week's project for the 4-leaf clover in sort of in honor of St. Patrick's Day. So if you wanted to make some suggestions, I will surely consider it for next week. I have been considering incorporating several of our existing projects into one bigger panel. A few weeks ago, we did the blazing sun, and I was considering, and then maybe I think the week before that, we did sort of a geometric pattern. And I was considering doing a repeated pattern of that geometric pattern in 4 corners, and then creating a filler area in the middle, and then having the blazing sun right in the middle of all that. So I'm considering that right now for these last 2 weeks of the Scrapbox projects. And then after that, we've got some kit projects. And what it is it's 4 sheets of glass, 4 to 5 sheets, I believe. And it comes with all of the vinyl patterns for the project. And then it'll be 4 distinct patterns each month. So it might be a landscape, it might be some sort of flower, something like that. But each week we'll be using that same glass kit, and it will, be a nice sort of monthly thing. It'll be a part of the live streams every week. So if you're interested in that, that's starting in April, the first week of April, which I believe is in 2 weeks, the first Sunday of April. So I am pretty excited for that. And got another comment, Breaking Glass. Hello, I love the videos. I started learning stained glass through the channel last August. Oh, that's awesome, Breaking Glass. Thank you for coming back and joining us for the live stream. Be sure to check out that Stained Glass Mastery community, the free community. It's got some more great resources, even some stuff I haven't released here on YouTube. So I wanted to keep that sort of in that group. So if you're interested in that, check out the description for a link to that. And when the pieces do get pretty small like this, it can be a little tricky to handle with just your bare hands. So if you need to, again, get the gloves. Sometimes I'll even carry 2 grossing pliers to sort of handle it with both hands. And this, let's see, we're coming along pretty well. Now right here, I will be just doing a quick little cut and then grinding the rest of that down, because I put some Sharpie on there. Let's see, I might be able to get that. It's pretty small right there. Let's see if I can do it. No, I'm going to grind that. So now that we've got all of our pieces pretty much cut, we do need to clean them up on the grinder. And so for that, I'm going to be putting the glass cutter away, the grosers away, and the oil away. And we are going to bring out, oops, bring out the grinder. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the free camera here. Let's see if I can get you set up comfortably. All right, there we are. Okay, and for this, what I like to do is I have this water bottle with a little hole in it, and that way I can help to keep this grinder saturated. And breaking glass, yeah, there are many people that do this live streaming. I'm definitely going to join that group. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, check it out. And I think you might find some things helpful in there. And of course, I am still looking for recommendations for next week. So anyone, be sure to comment that. Okay, so the first one we're going to start, you see, we need to grind this down to the vinyl. And so this is another reason why I really like this vinyl. We can use it as a nice grinding template. And one thing, another safety concern with the grinding, you can pretty easily get some glass in your eyes. So be sure to wear some safety glasses, and that will reduce the chance. And it's not the funnest thing in the world. It's not like you're going to die or anything. I mean, don't get any glass in there. But happened to me before, not the most fun. Definitely would avoid it if you can. And homemade, yeah, I can do a sunclatcher in front of a window for next week. What do you think I should do for that as far as a subject? Let me know. And we'll continue grinding down here. And we've got another one done. All right, there we are. Let's see. And if you start to see it getting a little bit dusty like that, just apply a little bit more water. That's why I like to keep this little bottle around. It keeps it really quick. There we have it. And let's see, how many pieces do we got done here? Looks like we've got 3 pieces. I'm going to go ahead and move this over here to this side. Alrighty. And Breaking Glass is recommending something Easter or spring related. I would be definitely open to that. Let me know if you have any specific sort of subjects in mind. I was thinking maybe, when I think of spring, maybe some sort of blooming flower, something like that. I think something for Easter might be nice too. Maybe some sort of Easter bunny or egg, some eggs, something like that. Might be a fun little project. Making good progress here. Just have the 2 horseshoes to grind down now. Oh, Breaking Glass says they've been working on a lighthouse pattern. That's awesome. Yeah, we've got a place to share projects too in the community. I'd like to see that. I'd be curious to know about how big that lighthouse is. I know you can get them pretty big if you want to. Oh, that reminds me, we actually have a lighthouse, I think, on the channel. It's one of the earlier projects we did. I do like Lighthouse. It's sort of a peaceful scene. All right, so we pretty much got the pieces all grinded down, and we are going to move on to foiling. And let's see here. So before we do that, what we're going to want to do is I like to remove all of this excess vinyl here, and that way I can have a place to put the little pieces back onto in case I want to reuse it in the future. Now, I wouldn't say it necessarily works perfectly in terms of reusing it, but I do think it is worth a try. So we'll get these off of here. All right, you can use this for something else or you can throw it away. 21 by 10, that's a pretty good size. Yeah, I'd like to do something around that size for a live stream, but the problem is it would just take so long. And I'm not too sure if it would be of interest to do, a multi-week live stream on the same project. So that is one thing I have been thinking about. I don't know maybe what you might think about that. I would be interested to know. So I'm going to go ahead and put these back on sort of the way they were. It doesn't have to be perfect. Again, these may not even really be all that usable, but for me it's worth a shot. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and put them right back on the pattern where they were. That'll kind of help me keep everything together in the right way. Okay. And you can see these things get pretty dirty from the grinding. So we definitely are going to want to be cleaning this up here in just a moment. And you can see, actually, it looks like this clover got a little bit of a weird indentation. I'm gonna go ahead and touch that up right here just a little bit. Try to round that out. I think that'll make it look a little bit better. Touch that up on the grinder right here. All right, there we go. Got that kind of transition a little bit better. And we can put this right back onto there. All right. And this is essentially our panel so far. We're going to want to do, move this to the side, sweep off our area here. And now I think that what I am going to want to do is get some gloves on, because I like to try to handle the glass with the gloves because it will keep the oils from getting too heavy. And so typically I prefer to wear gloves while sort of cleaning them and doing the copper foiling. Probably once I start copper foiling I'll take them off, but to do the cleaning I'm going to want to keep some gloves on. And Homemade says, maybe a flower suncatcher with different colored glass used to celebrate both spring and Easter. Just an idea. That would be a nice idea. I'm going to look into that. And breaking glass, I have been working on it in several streams, but I'm not very good at the teaching because I am learning still. But cool to hang out with people while working on it. Oh, I gotcha. Yeah. It is nice to sort of have some people around when working on projects for sure. I enjoy it too. Now, what I like to do is I will take my glass here, and I like to use a little bit of blue glass cleaner. Not necessarily required, but since I've got it, I will use it. And you see all this stuff coming off, so we want to make sure to remove all of that glass dust and make this as clean as possible for when it is time to do our foiling. And I'm going to keep all the pieces on the side and then move them to the pattern when they are clean and ready to foil. So I'm making sure to really clean all the edges especially. And I think I'm going to also clean off this pattern just a little bit. Okay. So there we are, first piece. And this is a pretty small project, so I do enjoy, I do enjoy these smaller projects. We can kind of get them done in one live stream. That's always a good time. So we've pretty much got the edge all cleaned up. Make sure really not to skimp out on this step, because whenever doing a copper foil, you're going to want to make sure that these pieces are very clean, because any sort of impurities will prevent the copper foil from adhering. And that will, of course, be a major concern. And especially when you start to use flux and it gets heated up and it gets really runny, it can be very tricky to pretty much make sure that all of the materials are acting as they should. There's not a whole lot of room for error. And it's really not very difficult to clean them up. It just takes a little bit of extra time. So be sure to do the extra time. It is definitely worth it. Okay. And I'm liking the way this is coming out so far. For the luck of the Irish. I have to be sure to send this to all my Irish friends. All right. And if you have any Irish blood, this will be for you too. For St. Patrick's Day. Remember that thing where you have to wear green or you get pinched, something like that? Sounds like an HR violation. Okay. So, we are on our second to last piece here with the horseshoe. Make sure we are getting the edges all cleaned up especially. All right. There we are, fitting together very nicely. And as far as rags, this is literally one of our old cotton t-shirts, but just about any rags will do. I do find that some polyester might not be as absorbent, and maybe doesn't work as good as cotton, but whatever you got, I'm sure will work just fine. I probably wouldn't use paper towels. They sort of get a little bit linty. Something that's not too linty is ideal. All right. So here is our little 4-leaf clover and the horseshoe. So what we need to do now is go ahead and start the copper foiling. So I'm going to get the copper foiling apparatus out. And we are going to be doing the black backed foil. So let's see if I can get a good view here of this. All right. So we've got our black backed foil here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is remove this. There we are. And breaking glass, yeah, I like that. This is actually, I think, a Yagageni glass. This one right here, this green one, I believe is a Yagageni glass. And this brownish one is a, it is a Wismac glass. And this is just a part of our scrap boxes that we sell. And kind of got lucky with these colors today. All right, so the way that this works, it's got this little groove right here. And you just put the glass in, apply pressure, and it centers it on the foil. And then it sort of has a little bearing, a little ball bearing, or not a ball bearing, just a bearing right here, that as you spin it, as you apply pressure to it, it spins and helps to kind of push that foil onto the glass. And then when you get here, just pull it out a little bit, take your scissors, and just do a little snip. And then I like to overlap. I try to do about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to go ahead and take these gloves off. It gets a little bit tricky with gloves and adhesives. So now, what I like to do is kind of push the edges in around it and then fold it over onto the face. Just fold it over and zip it up. When you get to a corner, fold it over and zip it up. Just fold that over and zip it up. Just like that. Our first piece is done. Well, it's done with applying the foil. We do still need to, of course, burnish it. But I like to go ahead and apply the foil to everything first and then burnish after. So we'll do the same thing. And it kind of, this little foiler, it separates the backing and the foil. It's just a really quick way that I like to do this. Of course, if you don't have this, don't use it as an excuse. You're going to want to at least do some hand foiling. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe it just takes a little bit longer. And this one, it's really only got one corner, so we're just going to zip this thing up. When you get to these little concave areas, you kind of have to heat it up with your finger, and that'll help to just stretch that copper just enough to get it in there without a rip. So that's ideal. And you can see all the little texture and edges in the foil. We're going to burnish all that out. Maybe not out completely, but it'll definitely get flattened up nicely. Okay, I got a little bit of dust there. Try to take that out. There we are. Oops. There we go. And pull it out a little bit and overlap it. Breaking Glass says that I invested in the Magnafoiler and it has been great. I am interested in that. I've actually never heard of the Magnafoiler. I'll have to look into that. Is that, where'd you get that at? Just out of curiosity, I'll have to look into that. I don't think I've ever heard. I've heard of table foilers, and this is, you know, this is just the creator's foiler, handy foiler. But I've never heard of the Magnafoiler. I am always open to finding out what we can do to make it go a little bit faster if possible. Nothing wrong with that. And this, I have really enjoyed using this little setup I've got. It's just the blue foil caddy, and I keep my X-Acto blades on there, my FID, and of course all the different foils. And that helps me really keep it all in one place. And something else I've been really liking is the IKEA pegboard. That has been really helping me to keep all of the tools organized. Very thankful for that. Pretty good price, like most things at IKEA. And we are moving right along here. Go ahead and pull this out. And if you overlap more than 1/4 inch, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you probably want to do at least 1/4 inch. It's ideal. That'll make sure that you won't have a void between the two, between the starting and stopping of the foil run. And that way you will have a full coverage, which of course we want. And now we are working on the horseshoe pieces. And these are long and narrow. This particular glass that I'm using, this Wismac glass, it's a little bit of a more comfortable in terms of thickness. The Yagageni I was using, it has a bit of a more texture, more varying thickness. So that was a little bit harder to push into there. But I was able to get it nonetheless. And Cynthia, thanks for coming by. Good afternoon to you too. Okay. So we are making good progress here. Got one more horseshoe piece to foil, and then we will burnish everything. And then before soldering, we are going to put those little horseshoe ridges made of foil on there too. And this is just a way to sort of elevate the, the piece just a little bit. This isn't, groundbreaking or anything like that, but it just gives it a little bit more helps people to recognize exactly what it is you're looking at, which is ideal for art. I want it to sort of be intuitive. So I'm hoping by adding these little ridges to the horseshoe, it will be a little bit more obvious. Okay. Got the last piece foiled, and we are going to keep this around just in case we do a little error. It will help us to refoil in case we need to. So we will go ahead and take all of our pieces off. And a lot of people, they really like this just bare copper look. It does look kind of shiny and nice and all that. I like it too. But we will be soldering it, of course. Now, before we do that, we are going to need to burnish it. So I prefer this fid over all others because it has this, sort of flatter end that we can use to pretty easily get into texture. Some of the other fids, they're a little bit too rounded, and you can't get into all the little texture. So we start with the edge first, foil all the edge down, and you start with the edge because you don't want to trap air in there, which could cause a failure later on. And then we will burnish the face. And you want to sort of do it in towards the center, not out, because you could knock that foil off, and that will be a bit of a problem. So we want to avoid that, of course. All right. There we go. And we're going to want to turn it over and do the same thing on the other side. And this is the textured side. So you want to make sure to really get that foil into the ridges of the texture. Okay, so that's the first piece done. We're going to go ahead and put it onto our pattern over here. Now you can't see that sort of off screen, but I'm going to put it on the pattern. This will help me to keep everything in order. And for a smaller panel like this, you maybe don't need to do that, but for a larger panel, it will definitely be necessary, especially if you have many pieces that are similar shapes. It will be a nightmare to try to figure out which piece goes where. Or it could be fun depending if you like puzzles or not. I tend to, when I'm doing stained glass projects, want to do the stained glass project, not necessarily a puzzle. Even though it sort of is like a puzzle no matter what. But if we can avoid some of the extra work, might be a little bit advantageous to us. And there we have it. The other horseshoe is burnished. Set that on the pattern. And now the lucky 4-leaf clover. And we do also need to decide where we want to hang this item. I was thinking about it, and I think that I am planning to hang it from one of the horseshoes with the little wire, because, oops, and here is a situation that happened. I do want to show this. So right here you can see I knocked the foil off, so I'm going to need to refoil that. So that's why I kept the foiler handy. And Homemade asks, are you keeping this looking coppered color? This might look cool. Now this will not be copper color in this case. We can try a copper patinaed project in the future. And if you'd like to see that, let me know. But in this case, we are going to be actually patinaing this black. And so right here, since I had this little error, I'm going to go ahead and refoil that spot. And what I actually like to do is I like to make sure it's burnished first in that area. So that way when I put the new foil on top of it, it won't have any sort of weird issues as far as the foil adhering properly. So what I just do, in this case, I'm going to remove just a little bit of foil, and I'm going to sort of hand foil this, cut off the end, and then overlap it just like normal. And then I'll fold it over. And I actually missed a little area right there, so I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more on. And again, just pulling this out just a little bit. And the reason why I'm not sticking the glass into the groove at this point is because it's a little bit wide, the foil. And it's hard to get and this particular glass is a little bit over textured, not over textured, but it's a little bit thicker than most glasses. So it's a little bit hard to fit inside of the foiler. And so for that reason, I kind of pull the foil out and sort of apply it by hand. And to do that little area like that is not a big deal compared to doing the whole, every single piece by hand. For me personally. But for some, they enjoy the process of the foiling, and they prefer just to, do it by hand, and that's perfectly fine. And this one, this is kind of where that thicker glass comes into play. We're going to need to add a little bit of foil right here too, where it's barely on the edge. So we're going to go ahead and add a little piece right there. Cut that down. We're going to just fold it over. And then we're going to need to smooth this transition out on the X-Acto blade. I'll show you that after I finish burnishing it. So we'll burnish the edge first, then the faces. Oops, we got a little piece right here we need to do also. And at first we were having good luck with the 4-leaf clover, and now we might be having some problems. But that's okay. We can fix anything that goes wrong here. And it's better to catch these issues earlier than later. So now we've got that piece covered, and I'll show you how to smooth out that transition here shortly. Let's check this side, make sure that everything has a nice, at least little area over the face. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and show you how we can fix these transitions, and it's important to have an X-Acto blade handy. So what I like to do, just cut that, let's see if I can get you a better angle there. Just cut this transition where it looks, or cut this foil I should say, where it looks like a nice smooth transition. And then you can remove that excess, and there you have it. Looks good. And we'll have one over here to do. See right here, we need to do the same exact thing. And we'll just cut that to a nice smooth transition. And that looks good. And Breaking Glass asks, how many layers of foil is too much, do you think? The thing is that it's going to be soldered down. And I honestly haven't had a problem. I mean, I'm not putting 10 to 20 layers of foil on there. But I haven't had a problem with any pieces failing. And, to be honest with you, where panels normally fail is the anchor point, or the hanging point, I should say. Wherever the panel is going to be hung from, the little hook or whatever, that, we work on hundreds of stained glass panels every year. And that is the spot that always fails whenever a client brings in a panel needs to be replaced, or repaired, I should say. So that's why whenever we do these projects, I try to really make sure that the wire or the handy hangers are pretty well submerged in solder and not just a tiny little jump ring, because the jump rings are the ones that seem to fail the most often. So just something to consider as far as the mounting method, if you will. And I am actually working on a video for the Stained Glass Mastery community for different mounting methods, including, jump rings and handy hangers, even picture frames, and a few others. So if you're interested in that, make sure to check out the Stained Glass Mastery community. And we are making pretty good progress here. Burnishing this face down. This is the very textured side. And this glass is pretty thick, and the foil didn't quite make it to the face in some areas. So we're going to have to kind of go back and put in a little bit right there. Not too big of a deal. I like to just overlay it a little bit, and then we'll cut that transition down nice and smooth with the X-Acto blade. Everything looks good on this side. And we'll switch to the close camera over here. And where was that spot? It was right here. We need to just smooth this transition out just a little bit. Actually, it looks pretty good as is, but I'm just going to cut this down just a little bit right there. That'll just add a little bit more to it. And we are moving right along. One of our 4-leaf clover pieces. We've got 3 more pieces here. So again, doing the edge first. And there we are. Nice burnishing. We're going to have to... Oh, no. That one actually went across the edge just nicely. Oh, we're going to have to redo that spot a little bit. I like to kind of try to confirm that the edge is well burnished. I'll just run it even while it's face down. There we are. Alrighty, and we'll just go ahead and refoil that one spot. And now that we have that, I'll go ahead and recut the nice smooth transition here. And we kind of just want it to have sort of following the glass edge, just like that. Then we'll remove this. There we go. There we have it. Okay. So, this is looking very good. All right. Can't hurt to do a little extra burnishing. So just take your time with it. Very important step. I want to make sure all of that foil is well adhered to the glass, the face, and the edges. Prevent any flux or contaminants from getting underneath it, causing it to separate. And in this case, we are using the 7/32 foil. And that's a pretty common one. Maybe not the easiest for beginners, but definitely probably the most common one, I would say. And for me personally, the 3/16 is just pretty much unusable. You know, they're only about a 30-second difference, of course, but it may not sound like much, but a 30-second can really be very substantial. Even from the 7/32 to a quarter, that's a 30-second over. it really does add quite a bit of foil. So something's going on with this foil right here. It's not sticking very well, so what we're going to do is remove this and see what's going on with that. I wonder if I had some debris left over there. Go ahead and re-clean that spot. And then we're going to try to foil that again. It seemed like no matter how much I was burnishing, that just wasn't quite sticking. It was unusual. Let's see now. Let me go ahead and run this back through. It looks like I actually missed a little edge there. I'll go ahead and refoil that spot. Get that little spot there. Okay. And let's see, we're going to want to make sure it's right centered. And I did touch this foil a little bit. A little bit of touching of the foil in the adhesive area is not the end of the world, but overdoing it, it can make it not sticky. So I'm wondering if that's a problem that I had originally. That was very unusual. And whenever you're doing it, you want to make sure to go in the direction that the foil is adhered, not to knock it off. Because that will, if you go the opposite direction, that will cause it to get knocked off. We'll just burnish this back down. And we are holding better this time, so that was strange. It must have just been a little bit dirty, something like that. Okay. And these curves, they get a little bit bunched up. We have to really kind of take our time with them. In this area, the glass is a little bit thicker, didn't quite make it over the face there. So, we'll continue on here. And we'll see if the luck of the Irish will carry us through to the end of this project. So this is looking pretty good. We do need to redo this area a little bit. Add a little bit of foil. And kind of overlaying it pretty heavily here, because I want to make sure we don't have any problems. And this is purely due to the glass that I've got selected here. If you select a smoother glass, you won't have as much of an issue with this spot. I'm going to go ahead and burnish it down, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut it down. And this is kind of a long way to cut, but I think it'll kind of give us the best result. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. So now we'll take this over to the X-Acto blade. We're going to cut this, trying to just mimic this glass edge. If you have it a little bit thicker like this, it'll just look like a whiter solder bead, which, to be quite honest with you, is not a big deal. So this is definitely not required. You do not need to do this. I'm just trying to do this just for a little bit of a more consistent look. And so there you have it. I'm actually going to look through. Looks like I might have a few other areas I need to smooth out. There's one there. This one looks good. So we will continue on. Trying to make sure all of the edges are down well. Kind of going back over it, make sure everything is properly adhered. And we have the last little stem piece of our 4-leaf clover. So we are making pretty good progress here. Go ahead and do this textured side first. Try to knock all that foil down onto that texture. All right, there we are. Okay. Now we've got our little stem done. We'll see how our little panel is looking so far. All right. So there we have it. Here is our panel so far. And what we want to do now, before I forget, is we want to do these little areas on top of the horseshoes, because we want for these to have a little bit more visual interest. Now I'm going to be using this black backed foil for these areas also. So I'm going to cut out a strip. Let's see how we're going to do this exactly. I think I'm going to remove this glass for the moment. And we are going to put a little strip onto there. See, we can kind of rip that off. And we're going to be trimming all this out to the shape of that vinyl. And we did this last week on the ghost eyes, and it worked out pretty well. So I was pretty happy with that. And let's see how this, okay, we need a little bit more on the top. Okay, let's see here. Let's see, what I might do is something like this. Let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more way down there. Oops. Okay, I might have stuck it down a little too early. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to put a little bit more right there. And I think that will pretty much do it. For this part, I'm just going to need to cut this down with the foil. I'm sorry, with the X-Acto blade. So we'll do that for that one, and then we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Alrighty. So we'll put a little piece here. And I like to use the black back. I just think that it looks a little bit better from the back side, in case you ever see it from the back side. Most of the time you probably won't, but it can't hurt to just try to do the best we can. Do what we think will look best, no matter what. And then we can burnish this foil down, and then we will cut it out with the X-Acto blade. So let's see. Kind of looks something like this right here. Alrighty. Got our two little templates down. And I think we're pretty much done with the foiling, so I'm going to kind of move that to the side for the moment. And I am going to go ahead and burnish this down. And if you burnish it down on top of the vinyl, it will stick all the important places that we are planning to keep. And then that's what we're going to solder on top of for our little horseshoe detail. And I have seen some people doing these cry cut or cricket sheets of copper foil, adhesive back copper foil for these, and I'm going to definitely look into that. But for now, this will work pretty well. And definitely going to need a sharp blade here. There we go. Try not to let that foil get all bunched up. It'll sort of drag, and it won't really cut through. So you want to avoid that. Keep a nice, consistent cut. And before you know it, you got a nice looking little horseshoe detail. And we're just going to dig up all of this. Let me get this out of here. Here we are. We're just going to dig all this stuff up as much as we can. And then we'll remove the vinyl. And it may seem like a little bit of extra work, but I think it's definitely worth it to put that little detail into that horseshoe. And these pieces are burnished pretty well. You can see none of our other foil is coming up, even though this overlay was kind of attached to it. There we go. Got it. Okay. So now we just want to do a little bit of rounded edges here. That'll be kind of the finishing touches. Let's see what we got here. There we go. Just that little bit. We'll just take off that little sliver. And then we can clean this up a little bit more once the vinyl's off. So now we are going to take off this vinyl. Let's see how it looks. Trying to keep the foil on, but removing the vinyl. And if we have to, we can do some little foil repairs for this little horseshoe detail. Let's see. I might have burnished the vinyl down a little bit too hard to the foil. So that might make it a little bit more difficult for you. Just be patient. Look, we have a little foil repair we have to make right there. But that we can eyeball. We don't need the little horseshoe detail from the vinyl. So I'm just going to take a little piece, put it right on top, like that. And then I am going to cut this down. I'm going to try to, let's see, there we go, got that piece off. I'm going to just cut this down, try to follow that edge, make a nice smooth transition, just like that. And we'll do the same thing on this side. All right. And then we're just going to burnish this down a little bit more. Can't hurt. And now we are pretty much ready to solder this piece, but we still need to do this piece. So let's go ahead and cut this down. And we'll do a nice smooth cut using the vinyl as our little template. Almost like cutting glass a little bit. Just be sure not to cut yourself with that sharp X-Acto blade. And you can try it with a utility blade, but I think it's going to be a little bit tougher. I really think an X-Acto blade is the way to go. And most crafters have one handy anyway. They're so useful for a lot of different things. So make sure to grab yours. And yeah, Cynthia, I think it really adds a nice touch too. I think it's definitely worth just a little bit of extra effort to really show that horseshoe off a little bit better. There we are. There we go. Oops, the blade came out. Let me get that back in there. Okay. And then we'll get the blade underneath this foil, peel it up, Just like that. Okay. So now we've got that done. And we can peel this up, just like before. There we are. Put it back on our pattern for later. And now we just need to burnish this down a little bit more. A little bit of extra burnishing cannot hurt. And we're going to do a nice bead of solder over that. All right. So now our little design here is pretty much done. Let's see, what do we need to do? We need to arrange these pieces properly. And then what I think I'm going to do is, let's see, make sure we have everything in the right spot. It's all fitting together pretty nicely. All right. So now what I think I'm going to do is leave this right here exactly where it's at. And I want to go ahead and put the, I want to tack this in where it's at, on top of the pattern, so that I know, I want it to be in this way. I want it to look right. Because if you start to take it off, you won't have the pattern as a guide, and it could be a problem. So now it is time to solder. And we do not need the copper foiling apparatus out anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing out of here. And then we're going to get our soldering iron plugged in. Okay. And we are pretty much ready to solder. Now make sure you've got some good ventilation. And, okay, I've got the soldering iron plugged in. And it's getting hot. I'm going to go ahead and put on some gloves here. Nitrile gloves, again. I like to keep my hands away from the chemicals as much as possible. All right, here we are. And we're going to go ahead and get the flux out while the iron is heating up. And we're going to get our solder out. And we're probably going to want our, we're going to need this shortly, so we'll keep it around. We are going to turn on our little fume extractor. Okay. Turn this on. There we are. So we will have some fume extraction from all the flux and all that. So let's go ahead and check. So the iron is getting hot already. I can feel it. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and touch that. Not quite ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to tack some of these joints together, and that'll be the easiest and most effective way of keeping the panel the way we want it. And as far as the iron that I like to use, I normally use this Weller 100 watt. And this works pretty good for these smaller projects. It's not bad. It does get pretty hot compared to the Hakko. And I'm using the 6040 solder for this project because we're out of the lead-free right now. But normally I use the lead-free, and the lead-free is a little bit of a higher melting point. And since it's a higher melting point, you need a higher iron, a hotter iron, I mean. And the little Hakko kind of doesn't cut it for me personally. As far as the lead-free solder, you can get the rheostat, and then you can have that temperature control the same way as the Hakko. But, I mean, the Hakko would work perfectly fine for the 6040, no doubt. But for the lead-free, you really need the hotter one. And so that's why I prefer to have this one around, because I'm normally using lead-free. I just happen to be out right now. And the 6040 is available, very readily available. Okay, now one thing I do want to mention, we are going to kind of be hanging this with this jump ring wire around. It's probably right here, I think would be nice. So I'm planning for that. We'll kind of get to that in a little bit. Now the iron is molten and ready to go. You can see that it's a little bit dirty, so what I'll normally do, I'll take this wire brush, and I like to just clean it off like this. See that? Just take off all that stuff, and now it's clean. Quick and easy way to do that. And so right now I'm going to be tacking this together. So I'll just load the iron just a little bit with a little bit of solder, tack that down, and you can kind of hear that sizzle. And that way I know everything is going to be in the right spot. Now this looks like it might have moved a little bit, so I'm going to see if I can get it back. That looks pretty good right there. And this one, before I tack it, I want to make sure it's pretty much where I want it. So that looks good right there. And we just need a tiny little droplet of solder on there, just like that. And then I'm going to make sure this one looks good too. A little bit of a void right here, but that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and tack that whole thing together right there in the middle. Then I'm going to tack this one together there too. And now with just these little tacks, this thing is going to hold together very nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like. Oops, and it got a little bit heated from the vinyl beneath it. Move that out of the way. So you see how this thing is holding together just from these little tiny tacks. So I'm really liking the way this is looking so far. What I am going to do is put on my heat-resistant gloves. It really, I would recommend you getting them if you don't have any. These work quite well. And for little panels like this that you're going to be handling with your hands, it definitely makes a bit of a difference to have something to protect your hands from the heat. So that's why I like these. Now we're going to go ahead and... Now this, I don't believe I flexed up the entire thing. I think I just put flex on the little joints. So I'm just going to run some flex over the entire thing. And we're going to do not a beauty bead on the first run. We're just going to kind of get everything really soldered well. And then we're going to go to the other side and we will do some runs there also. Make sure we are all connected very nicely. And then we can come back to this side and do more of a beauty bead. Right now I just want to really get everything all soldered together. I want to go ahead and tin the edges, and then we will go back to the other side. So we'll go ahead and kind of just drop some droplets onto here for right now. And so that will give us a little bit of our horseshoe indentation. It's looking pretty good, pretty happy with that. And then we're just going to kind of take some solder and we are going to tin the edges. I need to probably put a little bit more flux on around the perimeter. Just like that. I'll go ahead and just really flex it up. Can't hurt. And yeah, Cynthia, definitely, I got these off of Amazon.com and they work pretty darn well, if I'm being honest with you. Only problem is they do get a little bit slippery from the flux, but once I'm done edge beading, I just take them off and I'll just keep the nitrile gloves on to protect my hands from the chemicals of the patina. But, you know, I'll take a little bit of a slippery grip instead of burned hands any day, I think, personally. But to each their own. And this is coming out very nicely. I'm very happy with this so far. Okay, we're going to go ahead and flip this over. And we will do this side the same. We're going to flex it all up. Just like this. There we have it. And on this side, we're probably going to want to pretty much do a full beauty bead. And it might get a little bit messed up. You know, whenever you're working on a very small panel like this, there's a lot of heat in a very small area. So it kind of melts the other side. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do a few layers, or a few runs, one on each side. So this is the second run. And I might even let it cool down a little bit, because it can really honestly just be a little bit too hot. And it can just be impossible to work on. So we're going to go ahead and do a little bit more here. There we are. Okay. Now, I do think I'm going to kind of touch this up pretty nicely. Get it looking the way I like it on this side. And then we're going to let it cool. And then we're going to go back and do the other side. And then we are going to edge bead, which is why you especially need the gloves. Okay, this side I'm pretty happy with. We're gonna let that cool for a few moments. I might even wipe it down with a rag. And by the time we get done with that, I think we'll be pretty much ready to do a nice bead on the first side. And we're going to go ahead and touch this up again one more time. But for right now, we're going to focus on this side. So you see how it looks pretty rough right now. We're going to go ahead and go over all that. There we go. You just want it to be a nice rounded over bead. Just like that. And these are so small, you can pretty much get the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and touch this up. Oops, there we go. And so this is looking quite good so far. I think that we might be pretty much ready to edge bead this. Now, we are going to want to, of course, put our little wire here. But I think we're going to do that after we edge bead the rest of it. So to edge bead, you definitely will be needing your gloves. Or you could use some little stands, and I've even seen some people recommend using clothespins to sort of pinch the glass, and then you can kind of keep it away from your hands in case any solder drips onto there. So that's an idea, something to consider. Now what I like to do is I sort of bend the solder up, and then I'll take a little bit from the iron. I'll just load a little bit onto the iron, and then you can just kind of walk it around the entire perimeter. And it doesn't take much, and you kind of just want a nice bead. Something like that, and you'll just keep, you kind of have to let it dry. Or cool down, really. And then you're sort of just walking it around. So you don't want it to look all bumpy like this. You want it to kind of be nice and rounded over. And gravity is sort of working either against you or with you, depending on what angle you're sort of holding the panel at. So you need to keep that in mind and try to use it to your advantage. So you see how my hands are kind of underneath where I'm working? You want to try to avoid that, because that solder, even if you're wearing these gloves, it can kind of drip through the fabric. And then, what are you going to do then, You have to try to take them off quickly. But if you can avoid that, might as well do yourself the favor. So this is looking pretty good. It's got a little bit balled up. I'm going to go ahead and knock that down. There we go. Nice and smooth. And we'll just keep walking this around. Oops, I got a little bit of fabric in there. There we go. And you're kind of doing this little dance of spinning it, turning it, just so that you can work in whichever angle is most advantageous with the gravity. And a lot of people, if you're having a hard time, is to, if you have an iron like mine that doesn't have a temperature control on the handle, you can unplug the iron and you can cool it down a little bit, and that will keep it from getting as runny. So if you're having a hard time, try that out. Otherwise, it just really takes some patience and just moving little by little all the way around until you're comfortable with the look. And you can see the solder is a silver finish, and there is a silver backed foil, so you don't have to patina it. But I do want to go ahead and demonstrate that today, especially since we used the black patina. So just something to consider. Okay. This is looking pretty good. So you see how we have this big old blob right here? We want to remove that. That's kind of part of the edge beating process. And you see here it's not too smooth. I don't really want that. I want it to be smoother. There we go. Sometimes you might need to add a little bit of flux if it's just not really seeming to go your way. And again, since it's such a small piece, it could also be getting very warm, and you might need to let it cool down. Got this little ridge right here. I'd like to kind of close that. There we go. And then I want to, and if it gets to be too balled up, it'll just roll right off, and that's okay. There we go. And this area, I believe, is where I started on. This is looking pretty nice in this part of the horseshoe. Oh, right here it's all... I might actually go ahead and hit this one more time just to see if I can round it out a little bit nicer. There we go. Let's see. And I'm touching something, even with this heat-resistant glove, it's still pretty warm. But definitely makes a world of difference. Okay, we're going to go ahead and go onto this foiled side, so you can kind of see the copper still down there. Go ahead and there we go. And you want to make sure that all your transitions between glasses are pretty smooth. Let's see if I can find... So right here, it was a little bit sharp before, but it's kind of filled in with enough solder to make it look nice and smooth. So just kind of look out for those sharp kind of corners, especially if the glass isn't cut perfectly, which we are humans, so it's unlikely it's going to be cut 100% perfectly every single time. So just watch out for that. All right. All right. I think this is pretty much where we started. There we go. Nice, smooth. edges. Okay. So this is looking pretty good. Now that we've done the edge beading, we are going to want to maybe look and see if there's any areas need to be touched up. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And we've got a really thick bead of solder right here. I wonder if we need that. I don't think so. Go ahead and knock that down a little bit. There we go. I'm just going to kind of neaten this side up first. And then we're going to do the finished side after, since the other side is really the viewing side. Because we have the little horseshoe details on that side. So this I'm pretty pleased with. I'm going to go ahead and let it cool for just a second longer. And then we're going to flip it over. Make sure we don't have any of these little solders anywhere. Go ahead and flip this over. And make sure this side is looking very nice, which I am pretty happy with it. Maybe just a little bit right there. There we go. The rest of this is looking pretty good. So now what we want to do is remove all of this debris, because it's kind of making the glass not quite sit properly. And now, get that thing off there. And now we are going to want to add our little hanger. So what I like to use, this particular is 18 gauge. You could use a thicker gauge like 16 or 14, and probably I would do that if I was you. I got this 18 gauge out of kind of convenience, but I would probably recommend getting a 16 or 14. It's just a little bit stronger. Now, what we are going to want to do is make a little jump ring, something like this, so that we can hang it. And let's see what the best way to do this would be. Yeah, because I think it would probably look best sort of hanging like this or like the, no, by the horseshoe, yeah. So what I'm going to do is tack this in very lightly. And actually I'm going to tack it in on the back side because we want it to be mostly hidden. You know, we don't want to really be showing this too obviously. And what I like to do is I like to just try to get that shape really close, tack it in, and then from there I can go back and you know, it'll be a little bit easier to solder it if we do it like that. Because it gets really hot, you're going to really want to be very careful with this part. So there we are. So that looks pretty good right there. So what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of flux, grab a little bit of solder. We're just going to try to tack this on. And I think we might have got it. No, not quite. Oh, tacked it on but in the wrong spot. So I can lift this back up. I need to grab a little bit more solder. There we go. I think I got enough that time. There we go. Okay, definitely got it tacked on the right side that time. And so now I'm going to kind of conform it to the right shape on the back side of this horseshoe. And you have to be careful. You want to kind of do it on the outside because if you do it too far inward like this, it'll show through to the viewing side. So you want it to be kind of right on that perimeter. We can submerge that in solder, almost like a thicker edge bead. And this is just going to make this panel a lot less likely to fail in the future, which is what we want. And I'm going to go ahead and break it off right here at this joint, maybe a little bit past the joint, just like that. And I'm going to kind of start soldering way up here and then bring it down. So we're going to bring our solder back. And I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and flux this up a little bit more, because that'll just kind of make it a little bit easier for us. I'll grab the iron, grab a little bit of solder like that, and we can tack it in different spots. Let's see how we're looking. Okay, so that's tacked in right there. And then we're going to try to keep it really close to the glass. You don't want to add a whole lot of sort of width to the glass. So you can kind of fold it into the glass, tack it down. And this is pretty good right here. This is about really pretty much right on the edge of the glass. And just have patience. There's really no need to rush this. There we are. See that? We're going to let that cool, and then we're going to, and by the way, this would be impossible without the gloves, the way I'm doing it. So definitely get those. I've got some other videos where I was kind of doing this without the gloves. And you see me all, getting burned, and kind of funny, but I do not recommend it. Okay, so I'm going to kind of put this sort of to the back like this, and I'm going to solder that right down. That's exactly what I want. Exactly like that. See that? See how it's pretty much fully submerged in solder of that whole little wire? So that is what we want. We're going to do the other side the same, but before we do, I'm going to go ahead and complete this side. There we go. Okay. And you can kind of create a nice bead on top of it. It might be that we need to let it cool down a little bit. We can keep kind of building this bead up, trying to hide that wire as much as we can. Yeah, let's go ahead and let that cool for a moment, and we're going to work on the other side. So again, we're going to bring this around, and I'm going to snip it down pretty much right where we cannot. Yeah, there we go, right there. It's a good spot. And we're going to kind of want this to be on the back side. It'll just make it a little bit easier for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually hold it down at the very end, and that'll keep this spot in place where we want it. So I'll tack that down, and I'll even tack down a little bit further down the line. I might have to grab a little more solder. There we go, like that. Let that become solid. And then we can tack this part down. There we are. So we're going to, let's see the best way to do that. I'm going to kind of hold it down right here and then tack it on from the back side. And then we can tack all the area in between. And it's getting pretty hot, even through the glove. So definitely have the gloves. And I can't believe how long I went without the gloves, to be honest. Oh. Sometimes when it gets too hot, it'll come undone like that. And it was still warm enough when I pushed it back down. Something caught it. There we go. See how that's really submerged now? That's what you want. You just want to build it up to that. Just keep building it up. And so now we've got this side. I'm going to let that cool and go back to the other side. And actually this wire is a little bit too far on this side than ideal, but it's pretty much in there, so we're gonna leave it like that. And we're going to try to just do a nice beauty bead here. And I might go ahead and edge bead this a little bit taller. See if I can get that. grab just a little bit more here. Unspool a little bit. All right. There we go. We'll smooth it out on the face here. There we go. That's looking good. And then we're going to go ahead and work back on the other side. There we are. We'll go ahead and turn this back over. And I think from here we should be able to fully solder this. We're just going to kind of neaten up the other side. And this jump ring will never go anywhere, guaranteed. And I am comfortable with that. So now we need to patina this. So our first thing we want to do is make sure to get this iron out of our way and unplugged. So we'll go ahead and do that. Way on the other side of the table. We don't want to be burning ourselves. And we are done with the fume extractor. And so what I like to do is do a quick clean on the panel here. And we don't need our gloves anymore, the heat-resistant gloves. We still have our nitrile gloves on. So I will go through, just do a quick spray. And we're going to want to kind of knock all this stuff out of here. And we'll clean this off. Still a little bit warm from all the work we were doing. And we're going to be getting a lot of patina on it next. All right. There we are. And so I like to use this black patina from Novacan. It's a pretty good product. And I'll just saturate the rag pretty heavily and just apply it. And you do have to be a little bit careful. I have seen this patina stain some glasses, especially very transparent glasses. So you just want to kind of be mindful of that. And we're putting it on pretty heavily. Now in this case, this panel is so small, even if it did stain, it would change the entire piece of glass because the whole thing is being saturated with patina. Sometimes if you have a bigger piece of glass, the whole thing might not be touched by the patina, so you might really notice that stain. So just something to keep in mind. And this patina isn't acid, so definitely be sure to wear some gloves when you're using it to protect yourself. You don't want to, get any sort of chemicals on your hands, much as you can avoid anyway. And make sure to go ahead and do all of the perimeters too. And I'll honestly wipe it more than just once, because it seems like if you do that, it might get a little bit of a better coverage. So that's just me personally how I like to do it. And it's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with this. Got that rusty horseshoe. And we've got our 4-leaf clover. And with the luck of the Irish, we were able to get this all buttoned up nicely. And so after we've got it patinaed, I'll normally let it sit for a little bit. We've been kind of doing 2 rounds of it, so it's probably pretty much fully reacted. And I'll go ahead and, just with the blue glass cleaner, go ahead and clean this off. And I have seen some people, they'll use some sort of flux neutralizer, acid neutralizer, something like that. I don't normally do any of that stuff. I find that after kind of cleaning it up, it's pretty much debris free. But if you want to, by all means, you can also wax it. I don't like to create too much of a barrier to entry and make it harder to do stuff. So I want to get people making projects as much as we can without any barriers. So if that type of stuff is a barrier for you, then don't worry about it. But if it's not, then by all means, go ahead and do that step too. And so with that, we are pretty much all finished up with the Lucky Horseshoe project and the 4-leaf clover just in time for St. Patrick's Day. So I very much hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out the Stained Glass Mastery community where we have many more like it and tons of additional resources. So I, again, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments, and we will see you next week for next week's live stream. Thank you very much. Goodbye.